then to be moved. What moves stones, they say. Where then movement itself is seen without delay. Then as a stone is picked up, placed in a saddle, and rocketed towards a target. Isn't not this that the stone is chasing the whole time? The chance to be rocketed, where then the target itself is the slingshot? So then we see depictions of people holding this as though it is a wand, but does it not create a wandering? And after so doing for so long, does then it not create a space for someone to then speak about what was wandered about there? Maybe a wandering as wild as a wild hare. Then we see depictions moving stones. And now it's depiction of moving tones. Where the greatness of its wandering is now then a lever with a pivot. Given what's talked about, where what's talked about there can then move what's talked about elsewhere. And now as an instrument, does it not let us know attitudes? Where then with instrumentation, the attitudes that we then know allow us to move about a space in harmony with that place. Where then we have become this stone to be thrown by this thing. To where our ability to play the instrument is in our ability to then find the attitudes of the notes that we're hitting, where we're going. What then gives us the ability to harmonize with that space there, based upon what it was that was created while the instrument itself found its tone. By finding its zone. Then with what instrument where shall we play to cause what we would say could give us the day? So we go there, 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 there. maybe without a care, but perhaps with a death stare. Maybe a little twang in our step gives us the right pep to let the place know that we know what it's all about there. Then as it's trying to go online to formulate an image what itself can be filled like a chalice. Where then it can cause a filling over and over again. What then, as it is drank from, then creates a wandering of a different sort. Where then before it was born of a symbol that captured a thought, what said nothing but had a following. Then, as it was seen to be, then it created the place for it to create its space, what is then its following. Where then now its following wishes to make more space by then going from place to place and asking for then other places to acknowledge what it wants. Given that it is something what should be over by its having profound proclamation, where then it's filling and emptying, it's filling and emptying, is then it throwing its stones from a previous life towards a kill. Now simply a matter of one who handles the instrument's skill. Where, though, does one go to then know that there is no feeling? For other places that then go to find what is without their walls, where then all I find are simply things that truly aren't what they need to be taken, where then I see them as being what itself is to be. Where then I see everything in this state. Where then, how am I supposed to take anything for me? The only thing I can take are stones. Where then things like to say they have power by creating a question that is unanswerable while answering every other question. Where this is in similitude to the beauty of their chalice. What is then a continual drawing of waters and then satiating one's thirst through quenching them with an answer. Then, as it was an unreadable symbol capturing the place in which it was found, now it wishes to capture sound, where then it can be something what is read about to then inspire thought rather than not. Then still all it is what it is now. Was it not this in its being a silent thing yet unfound? Where then was its point of becoming, if in being what it is now, where it was taken from? Then in what perspective of things does their form reside in? For I see something which is to create a question by its being above what is perceived as perhaps functional, maybe mysterious. What is mystery itself but a condensation of thought into then a downpour of rain? Then how much can a thing be what it is when we see it alive, when it's in its dry state to create itself as a question? Where when looking at the question I see something above what I see when I see it alive. When I see it alive, though, is it not still miraculous to see the thing as a road runner rather than a depiction of an ascendant being with feathered wing and a crest? Where then do we see all these things in different states? Where then is their best state? When not in a state of being? Where then in the state of being, are we not then satiated from our thirst of their creating the question? Where then upon so doing, the ritual itself we then call having no richness? For it's truly simply the thirst that we're after, not necessarily the waters. Where when we take a drink and we become part of the ritual, it's simply 9 to 5. And what do they say about science? Where when we understand it so, Isn't it not even scientific? For isn't science the process of discovery? Where then upon it being daily occurrence, is it not even then not scientific? Just simply the way things work? Where then we call ourselves back to the earlier time of when we had thirst. And then we say that that place is actually higher than now. For now we know how things work. But it's not how things work that we're actually after. What we're actually after is the time in which we say was before they're working, where perhaps we ourselves didn't work. But is that a higher order of working, where then things themselves worked not necessarily upon the connection of how it works, but perhaps the working without connection, where then visuals themselves cause things to move rather than visualizing the connection, what itself then takes away from the visual majesty of seeing a thing move from beauty. Where when we see things that grab us by the heart, we then try to create a conversation where then the conversation is to collapse them from being, where then there's two states of mind, here and right now, where then I said before, it's not actually the water that we thirst, but it's after the question. Where then the heart itself resides in a place of movement with no connection. Where though the place of being a question worth hearing is then created by the dialogue, what then itself wishes to close off the heart, where then the things that move by heart are then collapsed through conversation. Or then we cross our heart in hopes to find ourselves in a place where we then can know our heart. What is where truly then the heart itself feels a connection through conversation, where then these factions all war with one another, where then the heart itself does its best to know it's loved by conversation, but the more it seeks to know its love and see the connection, the less we're moved by love through the visualization of beauty. And the more we become immersed in the visualization of beauty, the less that we know that that's what we're moved by. Where then does a jellyfish lay? But then, where in fact it is a traveler that causes ourselves to think that our ritual is either worth having or worth becoming a greater ritual, where it's causing a swarm of jellyfish our way, either then collapses our ideologies or supports them. But either way, the one itself causing what it is to give good feeling somewhere. Perhaps with an abrupt latching onto. So then what is the greater way? To then have all things be a symbol for the thought they contain, where then they act upon all the thoughts of dialogue, silently moving things visually through their beauty and aestheticism, where then the connection between things is made through the heart and the eye? Or then do we exist in a plane of function where the ascension to the throne is itself a conversation, where instead of visually perceiving majesty before us, we move to majesty by having a conversation of all the parts that would be held by what we would call beautiful, that we ourselves would have no problem with, where then we see the connections. Then we listen to the dialogue and travel along the lineage of thought empirically until we go to the place that we say has it. Where then the place of no problems negates the fact that its occurrence is only a place for a problem, then not being the place for no problems for all problems. Where then is it the place where all problems are made? Then its problem is in failing to see all problems. Then places that invoke no thought as to their being there by an interaction of heart to open up before the mind. Then its feeling of failing to see any problems is a problem of feeling, that then its way of seeing no problem is perhaps missing out on a way of seeing no problem, that because of its way of seeing no problem doesn't allow you to see the other way of having no problem. What is a problem? Where then its problem is in not seeing one, where it grows as it gets closer to the problem, where it grows as it gets closer to no problem. But is its no problem a problem for another no problem? Where then there are cascades of problems, where then the problem of seeing heart or hearing conversation itself is invoked by objects would invoke either or, where one might call a place of no problem is itself a ritual that invokes the problem of thought, where it itself captures in a way what a beautiful aestheticism would capture, but in so doing not invoking the problem of it not having aestheticism of majesty, but in a way invoking the problem of thought as to then a connection of things, where then it is an aestheticism of sorts that is then an object represented in the pathway of one's ascension towards where they feel this vibration. Then there are objects galore in all varying types between these things that then invoke either or. Then that simple game of touching someone so their it moves beyond simple childhood fantasies, where then someone continually touches someone until they're it. What about houses? And all these houses then follow a mayor. Then there's a mayor house. Then what does it take to be the one to spur the home into Rome?
where then people are praised who never did, then worshipped for their undoing, then continually touched while being it. Then it's told that that's their place of leisure, where then that's what they're touched for. Then it feels good to them until I come along, talk about houses and horses and touching people. And then the whole thing is made childlike, where then all these adults running around thinking that they're actually doing something, just playing tag, touching someone until they're it, where then do I stand upon it? But in the place where really the only thing worth picking up is when it is itself having undergone the change of then having no personage, where then in direct conversation I relay the information in a way in which I am unable to do, but truly my doing is just beyond the perception of things that do. Where then truly they're only doing with me that is worthwhile is when they do nothing. And I can pick up everything. Where what is it to reside in this state, this place? This mindset, this frame, perhaps. What is where people hunt, and then the altitude and the brush blind the nose until it only knows to preserve the meat, then that there is more to meat than that. I give purpose to what has no nutrition, that it may sit well with me to call the day into having aura. So then, as I walk around watching everyone play tag, the same people are being it over and over again until people simply go and touch what is it, calling it then good. But then, what is it that I should touch when then this thought has touched me? Where I continually scan these pages to try and find some way to touch it. But every time that I try, what it is that everybody says there is to touch has no way of touching that thought, where then only in doing so is their undoing. Where then is this thought actually itself the creation of those things that then are it through undoing, but then the thing with the thought is unable to touch what everyone says is worth touching in being the thought which actually created the undoing, which is what is then worshipped as the leisure in which everybody goes to witness. Where then Saturn's rule of humanity increasingly condescending my well-being. Where then the things coming into being when it would be called it, then seeing a dilemma of sorts where it would be to be called it when it is called it is of accord with where it is, though where it is of what then would call it into being, then it has nothing to do with being, but that's where it is for all it has done to be. Then it is allowed to be if being has nothing to do with it, where it only is when being is nothing, where as soon as being has any part of being something, its being is no longer, where then it calls when questioned by being, has tried to be but was never good at being, then it is the place where what could be, for its place is calling nothing being, so then being goes through it, being when looking for something else to be, but it can only be there for so long, or even its being is questioned as what being is being, when being is easily on par with ritual, where then if being itself is an accord with ritual, then when is ritual but in a place where there is no other ritual for it to be perceived as such? Then this place of being only feels right when nothing is a ritual, what means it has no place in being a part of being what is ritual. Only in doing where it calls all ritual right, only when it is of no ritual, where then being knows it only by its being. When being goes to call itself ritual is according with what is ritual, where then its ritual is seen as right, when then what's wrong with ritual, when it has no sense of being, where then it's going to be on this ritual to then see its ritual is then its change in ritual. It's in being when every ritual is performed by every ritual, but only feels like it is of a way that has accomplished when as a ritual, when it isn't of ritual, then even ritual is when not ritual, for true ritual is not to speak to people from different planes, but perhaps airplanes. What is then ritual when it isn't but for this ritual? then there is no having a thing for the purpose of its having, when having things in this way, where then everything is outlived that could be had. Where then I see everyone as fools, especially in regards to all these far out science fiction to fact theories as to then gene therapy, where what are the designs that one phenotypically expresses in their outfits that they wear without care, but then to subtly influence their change so that then they're stared at differently rather than the same, while then calling themselves the same. Simply a matter of sewing it all together like a seamstress. They say that one isn't down at the level of the atom, but I say otherwise. Where then I hold this point between my fingers and then collapse all ideologies around me, then myself being the smallest. As I then walk upon the sidewalk, I noticed little things here and there, mostly just the occasional crack or perhaps jutted portion that might trip one up, though then I noticed markings that were remnants of construction, where, though I stood, they seemed out of place, as if where is the line of aesthetics and control beyond the walls of the home, where then I felt that shouldn't common aesthetics dictate that there be no such things upon the walk. Then I thought that the only thing to notice such things is what has no purpose on a walk. Where then do they represent a line of purpose in then where people call beyond the home? Where then is true aesthetics, but then where every line has no line of where one would say it is their line, and then where they walked would have no such line as to where then they walked upon what they called the line of failed purpose, where then this purpose is to be in romance, but then I see everybody walking around with their what they call pants on. Then in myself never being alone, seeing romance as a cheater out at Rome, then I myself walk around and do this little dance, being given all these thoughts and all this chance. Then I walked back into the home and felt then that purpose is a thing what resides within its walls as a barrier for this place, not allowing one to go all over the walls. That then what would bring into the home by calling it not what it is beyond the lines of purpose on the walk would then create disruption with the purpose of the home, where then the place becomes upset with then not being called what it is, for then actually making lines in the home as a crossing of the lines out on the street, for the purpose of what one does is then in one's home, as then the lines of purpose are encroached upon, what then comes in contact with the lines of strong wind that are out on the walk. Where then it brings into question the why this design, where then that design itself could always be questioned, and the question of design is itself a problem of problems, where one could say just because it negates all problems, is it its way of negating all problems truly the way of negating problems in the way in which all problems are aptly negated? And then out on that sidewalk still, sidewalk is built for one, like one should be able to walk around freely, nakedly, nudely, to come in contact with what they love. But like I said, I see everything all around me all the time as being, therefore I can't take any of it, seeing all of it as a cheater. Never wanting any of it anyways. For its failed purpose of vibration doesn't resonate with the true purpose of being, which is to see it all crumble. Or one's called in love, simply just being marooned. But as I'm marooned, I can't help but see all the thoughts that be, then myself never being alone to have what it is, what others would call is worth having. Then I walk around and see it all as a big lie, a big cheat. Then the only thing to do is to break it apart, to show everybody the lie. They might know what it is that I feel. Or they think they're all it, being called the one, without knowing the mass itself, what gives the right for the same to even be. Then there's no being alone. You see, then there's no doing of what being alone could afford. Where then the only way of doing here is then not seeing, having earwigs crawl and climb in and out of your skull, constantly pulling at your heartstrings, pinching your nerves. Until you bleed out of every pore and sit there and pour ink out of your palms as they're gauged wide open. And then look at any name and see the name is taken in vain, and stare everything down into oblivion. Having not even the magic of lineage. To where then I sidestep age, to then always being underage.